All right, looks like we are live. Good to go. Cool. So, thanks for joining me on another Sunday night Q&A. This week we are talking about really two specific things. Uh, I want to make sure that people understand not just that golf can be a game where you shoot a really good number or you accomplish a goal. Um, Statistically speaking, but it can be a game where you just go to have fun. Um, that kind of leads me into the first topic today. So I was playing today in a birthday event for a friend of mine, Michael. So happy birthday, happy belated birthday, Michael. If you're watching, I know you like to tune into these. So we were playing this event and happened to have some room in our foursome, and so I asked my wife, "Hey, I know you've started going to the driving range more. You've been on a scramble. So you've got an idea of etiquette, what it's like to play on a big course. Do you want to come out and actually play your ball from beginning to end?" And she said yes. And thankfully we were playing with some family members of ours who know the birthday boy, and we were just kind of going along. I told her, like, you know what, I don't want you to worry about score numbers. Like, I'll keep track and make sure that we're moving at a decent pace and make sure that we're not bottlenecking any other golfers out there. But what I want you to do in terms of keeping score for yourself is I just want you to indicate with a smiley face or with a frowny face or with a meh face how you felt about that hole. And this is something where, you know, you can get a lot from this, even if you are a seasoned golfer who plays a bunch and who shoots in the 80s. You could use this to help kind of keep track of your emotional state throughout your round of golf. Now, for us today, it was a nice day outside. It was her first time playing. I kind of prohibited her from writing down actual scores for herself. And I just wanted her to associate her experience with just an overall emotional feeling on each individual hole. So, yeah, there might be some bad shots, and there were plenty, but there were also some really, really good shots. And those really, really good shots were the ones that helped spark the smiley face holes. And I think by the end of the day, we were talking, and it was I want to say she said 13 or 14 smiley faces out of 18 holes, which is pretty good. So overall, we can say that, hey, she had fun and that she very much enjoyed her day out on the course. The couple of like frowny faces that she had, we came around one specific part of the course where a ranger normally sits like between, it's like right between like four holes. And so the ranger is kind of going back and forth between these four holes. And it made her nervous to have someone who's not in the group, who's not family, watching her play. And so those holes were where the predominant frowny faces came from. There were a couple of meh faces where it's just, frustration took over, but she had like a good shot or a good putt or something that kind of, put it on even keel rather than just having it be a frowny face. So I think this is a really good way for a lot of people to kind of just track their emotional state. Now, if you are a more accomplished golfer who's already shooting in the 80s, you can do this by, hey, Julian, good to see you. You can do this kind of emotion tracking by measuring your reaction. I think that would be the more telling thing. So, look at the hole as a whole, or if you want to go shot by shot and figure out whether, you did more or less good mental processes after each shot for that entire hole, that's fine. But what I would love to see people do is to kind of track their emotional highs and lows on the golf course with this simple smiley face, frowny face, meh face system. So if you were playing a par five and you par the hole, you might have a frowny face for that hole, if you had taken your eye off the ball, mentally speaking, and had like a frustrating reaction to one shot that like caused you a stroke or it cost you a stroke. It's one of those situations where just because the number that goes on the card might be good doesn't mean that it was necessarily a well played hole, mentally speaking. So the things that I always look at when I'm tracking my mental game is, did I analyze, did I visualize, and did I execute? Meaning, did I stick to that decision that I made through my analyzation and visualization? So that's one way that you can kind of look at this as a whole. Like, hey, all right, looking at this whole in total, did I overall take the time to do my proper analyzation? Did I read the breaks? Did I read the wind? Did I think about, hey, I probably want to land in front of the green and maybe bounce on rather than try to fly it all the way there? Or did I kind of skip some of those steps? And with my visualizations, did I, actually take time to think about, okay, I want it to go up and then over and then fall back across? Did I do that for every shot? And then lastly, did I actually stay committed to all of these shots? So you're looking at these three criteria for the entire hole. And if you did it well, you could give yourself a smiley face. If you didn't do it well, you could give yourself a frowny face. And just to kind of keep that mental statistic going throughout, if you were to track each individual one of those, that would be even better. Like, that's what I do. I look at the end of each hole. If I made par on a par five, did I analyze 5 out of 5 shots correctly? Meaning, did I read the wind correctly? Did I read the break correctly? If I didn't do something right in the analyzation process, that's okay. I just need to keep track of that so I know my tendencies and my habits. Like for myself, I tend to underestimate the wind, like whether it's in my face, crosswind, whatever. I tend to underestimate the wind's strength. So I may have made par on a hole, but it may have been 2 or 3 different shots as I'm approaching the hole where I didn't really truly analyze the wind correctly. And so the shot may have drifted farther right than I wanted to, and it made the rest of the hole just slightly more difficult. Then I go through, did I actually visualize what I wanted the shot to do? Now, this doesn't mean did I actually, like meditate over the shot and do all this stuff. For me, my visualization process, I just say it out loud. It's not that big of a deal for me. If I'm playing with people that I don't know, I just kind of make it a joke up front and say, hey, if you hear me talking to myself, that's just my own way of trying to get myself in the zone for the shot. That's how I visualize. So if you're going through this visualization process, that's fantastic. As long as you did it on 5 out of 5 shots. For me, visualization is pretty easy because as you all know, I'm a talker. And so it's not a big deal for me to get talking on the course, even to myself. And so I usually do a really good job on the visualization process. So that is something that I tend to do fairly well. So I likely would have had a 5 out of 5 strokes that I actually did visualize properly on a par five. Now, the execution part is where most people struggle. This is, did we stay committed to our shot? Not did we actually hit the shot that we visualized? Because honestly, I'm kind of the belief that like once you're on the golf course, you don't necessarily have a ton of control of what's going to happen that day in terms of what your swing will produce, because that is all determined by the practice that you've done in the rear view. So, how you perform today is a direct result of what you've done to prepare in days prior. So the execution is not, did I hit the high draw that I was visualizing? The execution is, did I actually stick to the plan that I had laid out? Not did the plan work, but did I stick to the plan that I laid out? If it's 155 yards, I know that's my 8-iron, and my 8-iron is probably going to go just a little bit far. My 8-iron goes about 160. So if it's 155 yards, did I stick to a 3/4 8-iron, or was I kind of going back and forth and thinking like, oh, well, maybe if I just white knuckled a 9-iron in there, I would turn it, it would turn out better. You know, if I'm having that competing thought process in my mind, then I do not get that point for properly executing my plan. But going throughout the hole, if I made the par on the par five, it's not did the shot look like I visualized, it's did I stick to the plan. So did I stay committed and hit that solid 8 iron, or did I have that thought about a 9 iron in the back of my head? uh, so it's really, if you want to break it down into more than just smiley face, meh face, and frowny face, you can do that. And if you do want to break it down into more detail, and I encourage you to, I would go analyze, visualize, execute. It's what I call following your avenue to success. And this is just something that you can use to see which part of your mental game needs the most work. So if you really, really struggle with that analyzation part, you know what? Maybe you just need to go out and intentionally go out in the wind and try to get comfortable with how the wind affects your shot, because that's one of those big dominoes that everybody does, but they may not know how well they do it. You know, how many putts did you think broke more but then didn't? For most amateur golfers, it's the other way around. They think the putt is fairly straight, but then it breaks more than they thought, and then they miss below the hole. So if you miss a putt that is like beautifully just stops like 6 inches past the hole, but you miss the putt, you have to think, did I stick to the plan and actually start the ball on the target line that I wanted? Or did I just misread this putt? And that's where I need more practice, is reading greens. So you can see how this all goes in and can really help influence your mental game in a positive way, so you can get stronger in those different areas. And I think for a lot of people, they don't know what areas they're weak in. I can tell you most people really, really struggle with the execution part, because it's so easy to second guess yourself on a golf course, because you think about the last shot. Oh, well, wow, that last 8 iron went farther than I thought it would. And then 2 8 irons prior, you hit it a little heavy and it only went like 149. And you're like, oh crap, well, that one didn't go so well. And you're caught in your own loop of self-talk, which sucks. But that execution part is where most people struggle. Then it's the visualization that they struggle with in terms of actually doing it on every shot. But just go through, even if it's just 9 holes, go through and track either smiley face, frowny face, or go through and actually track, did I analyze correctly? Did I visualize? And did I execute my plan? Did I stick to my plan? Go through and measure those things and see what percentage you are at for each of them. And obviously the lowest percentage is where you need the most work. Now, the pros are 95 to 98% on all of them. And that's a testament to their mental game, right? We know that the best players in the world, it's the old, oh, they've got ice water in their veins adage. Well, it's because they have a process and they stick to their process. For me, the analyze, visualize, execute is all baked into my pre-shot routine. And that's what it should be for you too. So I want to kind of move on from this point, because I think we've hammered it pretty well. But I got to play golf with my wife today and some friends, which was awesome. And we went with a very simple scorecard that was just purely smiley face, frowny face, or meh face. And that worked really well for her, but I really encourage you to do it for your mental game tracking as well. Now, the second part I want to talk about today is something that had come up in our Golf 101 How to Break 90 Facebook group. And this was from one of our students, David, who actually just broke 80 a couple weeks ago. And I had been talking at some point in a podcast or one of these lives, and I was talking about having like a training mode and then a trusting mode. And this is something that I actually, like, I first heard it put this way, which I really like the way that it sounds. You have like this training mode where I'm working on swing changes, I'm trying to make stuff better. And then I have this trusting mode, which is the shot that I'm going to play when I'm on the course. And this actually comes from Craig Jones. I want to say it was episode 50 of the podcast. So it's quite a bit in the rear view at this point. But Craig was sharing that he has this process where his training mode is, it's usually like 3 to 5 exaggerated swings with whatever type of swing change feeling that you're going for. And whatever the drill is, you essentially do like 3 to 5 walkthroughs, just no ball swings, or if it's trying to feel what a position is like, doing that 3 to 5 times in between each swing of actually hitting a golf ball. So this gets us really familiar with, without the focus of a golf ball, you start to be more in tune with different positions in terms of like where your body is, what you're doing, whether it's rotationally, things like that. So if you can take the time, and this is a great way for driving range practice, take the time to do at least 3, preferably 5 of whatever swing feeling you're working on every single time in between actual shots. And what that does is it gets you very much locked into this training mode. And then you have to pop out of it and switch gears into the trusting mode to actually hit the shot. So if you can go through and do this type of iteration, 3 to 5, kind of pantomimes or walkthroughs, practice swings, whatever you're working on, whatever you want to call it, do at least 3 to 5 of the practice and then hit one shot. Then do 3 to 5 of the practice and hit one shot. And if you work your way through your bag like this, you're going to notice huge results. So what I talk about a lot of times in terms of like how to practice properly is this kind of rapid fire like mindset on the driving range, where it's, I call it rake and fire, but you know what I'm talking about, where you pour out the whole bucket of golf balls into the little golf ball tray, and then you're just, pulling the 7-iron over, cracking it, pulling another one over, cracking it, just doing this over and over and over again, trying to develop some type of sensation or pattern. And really, and you've heard me say this 100 times, I'm sure, what you're doing is you're training your brain that it's okay to get it right on the 3rd time or the 5th time or the 8th time or the 10th time. When in reality, you don't normally get to hit 2 7-irons in a row. You don't. Like I got to hit 2 7-irons in a row today because I was playing conservative off a tee. The hole was like 370 yards long. I hit 7-iron. I hit 7-iron again, and it worked out fine. But that's because I was adjusting my, my expectation from the tee box by hitting 7-iron to stay safe. And then it gave me another 7-iron going in. If you're in the middle of the fairway, you don't get to hit 7-iron twice unless it's a par 5. And again, you're playing conservative. So I would really encourage you to kind of get that rake and fire mentality out of your brain. Eric Cagorno, he had a video where he was demonstrating something with a junior student, and the way that he had the practice station set up, I thought was genius. So the student had a line for his toes. I think it was just a lineup stick, and then he had another line to remind himself of that line just outside the ball. He had a perpendicular lineup stick just for the ability to see that the ball was where he wanted it in his stance. And then all of the golf balls were 15, 20 feet behind him. So he had to go and get one golf ball, set it up, go through his whole routine, and then hit the shot. So even something as simple as moving that basket of golf balls way, way back is something that it's really going to improve your practice, because now you have to take the time, and each shot has its own intentionality. That's the whole thing. Like, practice with a purpose means that every single ball that you send down range had some type of purpose behind it. And you have some type of metric tied to it. Did I achieve my goal? And that's really what we're looking for. So, it's something that can go a long way for you if you stick to that type of mentality, this training mode and this trusting mode. So if you do your 3 to 5 iterations of that feeling, whatever you're going for, and then you walk back to get your golf ball, then you walk back up to your hitting area and you go through your whole entire process as if it were a shot on a real golf course. You take your practice swing, you stand behind the ball, you line up, you do your analyze, visualize, execute, you do that whole process. And then you get up to the ball and you make your shot. And that is the trusting mode. So you've gone through the training mode where you have your walkthroughs, your air swings, whatever the case may be, without the ball to distract you. And then you move on to actually hitting the shot. So that's something, David, you wanted to know more about that kind of training and trusting modes. That's how I approach it. I think it's a good idea to have kind of specific designated areas, I guess you could say, for those different modes. And that's why I like to have the golf balls put way back behind me when I'm practicing, because not only does it give you that separation from the training and the trusting, it builds in that intentionality of the swing because you've gone through these 3 to 5 air swings and now you're ready to kind of get down to business. So I hope that helps you out, David. I see we've got some comments here from Julian looking for a strategy to help with rounds that are falling apart with consecutive double or triple bogeys, even though you might have, you've gotten off to a hot start. Due to lockdown, they can only play 9 holes and they cannot use any like the warm-up nets or ranges or putting greens. He says he gets warmed up as best as he can with swings, and he'll play really well for the first couple holes. Over his last few rounds, he's gone, even after 42, over after 53, over after 5, should have been 1 over, but had some brutal lip outs. Questioning to be a consistent bogey golfer by the end of the year. So those scores are kind of a little less undulating. So really what we're looking at is, how can we get warmed up without the ability to kind of hit shots? That's kind of it. And I know we've talked about this before, Julian, because you were a guest on the podcast. I really like Super Speed Golf for a warm-up tool in addition to a swing speed getting tool. So what I've done is I've essentially gone through like an abbreviated version of their training protocol where I will swing, and this is where I really think it hinges. It's the non-dominant directional swings. I think those get you warmed up really, really well. So if you're a right-handed golfer, swing left-handed. What that does is it helps stretch out both sides. And that way, when you do get on the course, you're not going through as many of those kind of groans as you're getting going where you're still getting loosened up. I know that's a big problem for me because I've had back issues and I've had, whether it's time constraint issues because my kids, where it's just like, the house was practically on fire with, parents' duties that I had to do, and I'm running 15 minutes late. So now I only have 15 minutes to warm up, and I'm going to spend that time on the putting green rather than a driving range anyway. But what I'll do is I will start on my knees and I'll take 3 swings in my dominant hand direction. So I'll take 3 right-handed swings, but then I'll take 3 left-handed swings as well. Then I'll stand up on my feet and I'll take 3 right-handed swings and 3 left-handed swings. And then I will kind of do a Happy Gilmore, do a step in. So I start with my feet together, and then I take my backswing, and then I step into it like I'm a baseball player, and trying to get my swing speed up, and then I do the same thing left-handed. And the idea is that you're kind of getting loosened up by swinging both ways. If you're someone who normally starts off really tight, I would look at any type of stretching, whether it's, static stretches, yoga, whatever the case may be, ahead of time. Like I've had to do a lot of yoga before I play now. But I would also start at kind of like a 50% power going through those 3 iterations, and then maybe bump it up to like an 80% power, and then bump it up to like 110% power. So essentially you're taking 9, 18, 27 swings and you're getting warmed up. So that's a way to get physically warmed up. In terms of putting, yeah, if you don't have practice facilities where you can get warmed up on that green, I think maybe the best case scenario is to, with as much time as you can kind of save, just like try to steal an extra 2 or 3 minutes just hitting practice putts on the first green, like after you hole out. You know, your first green might be kind of a nasty one in terms of touch, but then if you have the time, if you're not slowing down anyone behind you, just get in like a quick 4 or 5 minutes of doing like the putting ladder if you can, just to kind of get comfortable and familiar with the green speeds. Um, yeah, Julian says the strange thing is that he's been starting off really good and then he falls apart. So a lot of times if you're starting off well and then you fall apart, it has to do with kind of sticking to your routines, whether it's a pre-shot routine or a post-shot routine. So eventually everyone's going to have a bad shot. I'm trying to think. It took me all of 2 holes today to have a bad shot. The second hole was a par 3 and I just drew the ball a little too much and I caught some leaves coming down and it stopped the ball like a good 30 yards short of the green. The idea is that you have to be able to let that go. And what I encourage you to do is to have a post-shot routine that kind of syncs you up into your pre-shot routine for the next shot. So for myself, it's 20 steps. So I hit my shot and I'm looking up at the tree. I'm like, how did that freaking leaf manage to slow this golf ball down so dang much? Like I only heard like clip, clip with 2 leaf hits. How did that slow the ball down so much? And, I was kind of griping about it for the first 10 steps. And then I'm like, well, whatever. I mean, I can't really fix it. And, I allowed myself to kind of think about the swing that I made for the next 5 to 10 steps. I'm like, well, I can't really argue with it. It was good contact. It was nice and high. It started on the direction I wanted it to. In this situation, I misread the wind and the wind made it draw more than I wanted it to. And so I didn't give myself an analyzation point on that tee shot. But I took my 20 seconds or my 20 steps to think about it. And then I was almost to the ball by that point because we were in carts and I drove up and I took my time coming back to the ball. But I was at that point no longer thinking about the previous shot, and I was focused on what I needed to do for the upcoming shot. This was a very difficult green. It had a ton of slope to it. 30 yards is not my favorite chipping length. And it was just one of those situations where it's like, all right, it's time to kind of rein it back in and get back in control of my thoughts and more importantly, my reactions to what I'm doing. So it's really what it comes down to. Making sure that you have like a solid post-shot routine. For me, I give myself those 20 steps to think about it because it does a really good job kind of dovetailing into my next shot. So I get up there and as I'm taking my time to go through and kind of just block out whatever just happened, whether it's good or bad, because I don't want to be thinking about the glory of the last swing when I need to make another one. But it does a really good job for me because I always like to start to look at the course from a very wide perspective. I look at undulation, things that might be influencing how the ball's going to break, where there might be kind of some secret slope hidden, things that are going to influence a bounce, stuff like that. And by taking that time to kind of look at what has happened and then having a defined cutoff point as I'm approaching the golf ball really helps me kind of soak in that more broad perspective before I have to actually get into the zone and hit the next shot. So that's what I'd suggest for you, Julian. If you're having a hard time getting off the double bogey train when the wheels do start to fall off, I would start to look at, is it specific shot to shot where you're having issues with kind of closing the door on the previous bad shot, or is it more hole to hole where the shots weren't necessarily that bad individually, but they all just kind of stacked up to be something that wasn't as great as you hoped. And then going from there, was it that 7 that was really just stuck in your craw that you couldn't let go of? And then so that kept you distracted, and then you made another double or whatever the case may be. So look at it from a hole by hole perspective and a shot by shot perspective. Both of them in reality probably come down to having a better post shot routine. So, all right, well, we're at the half-hour point. We don't have any other questions. So I'll just go ahead and say, hey, if you want to attend more of these, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you actually, hit that notification bell. That way, when I go live. But it'll be every Sunday at 8 o'clock. If you want to talk golf, I'll be here to help you. All right, everybody. Until then, as always, I will catch you in the short grass. Cheers.